Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven, and I have been working in PR throughout my long career, and I have a special interest in personal branding. That's what makes you stand out from others who do the same thing that you do, and it attracts people to what you have to offer. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and a columnist for the Forbes Agency Council and Main Biz. My audiences have said that helping them think about their superpower has changed the way they think about their careers and their lives. I hope you like this episode, and I hope you'll share it with other people who might be interested in hearing it. Today's episode is powered by Pitchcraft. Here's a shout out to my sponsor, Pitchcraft. And with me today is this week's guest, Michelle Glogovac of the podcast Matchmaker and founder of the MLG Collective. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, Michelle.
Hi, Nancy. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you here too, all the way from San Diego, California, or San Jose. California.
San Jose, yes.
There's quite a few Sans, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego. You're San Jose.
Yes.
All right. So Michelle Glogovac is the podcast matchmaker, an award-winning publicist, host of My Simplified Life podcast. I need to listen to that. And author of How to Get on Podcasts. Michelle is working with clients who make an impact by defining their stories and matching them with the perfect podcasts. She has helped entrepreneurs, authors, nonprofits, and advocates hone their storytelling abilities, grow their businesses, and elevate themselves as thought leaders on over 1,000 podcasts. Wow, that's a lot. Michelle is a sought-after speaker in this niche and has presented to thousands of publicists and groups on how to not only do the perfect pitch for a podcast, but to create marketing content from every interview. She has coached 14,000 authors. Wow, that's a lot. Through the process of creating and launching a podcast book tour through the Nonfiction Writers Association. Michelle is a wife, mom of two, stepmom of two, and a fur mom. She has her BA and MS in law and is the founder and CEO of the MLG Collective. Michelle resides in the Bay Area and is a sushi lover, and I am too, Michelle. We'll have to meet in the middle.
Yes.
It'd be better to meet on one coast or the other for sushi.
We could meet in Chicago. They've got good sushi.
Okay, all right. Get pizza.
Yes.
So, Michelle, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
It's a total zigzag, as I found most career journeys are. I went to school to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do ever since I was in kindergarten. That was why my major was law, but I needed a part-time job when I was in college because it doesn't pay for itself and I could walk to the airport. So I ended up in corporate aviation. I sold jet fuel to corporate flight departments for 18 years.
Wow.
Yes, totally unrelated. I didn't even know how to listen to a podcast until 2018. I had been laid off from my corporate job, and by then I had two little ones. They were under the age of 3. They're Irish twins, a year and 3 weeks apart. My husband's also in corporate aviation. So we did a lot of travel. We had a part-time nanny, and it was like a circus. It was no longer the fun that it used to be. And having these two children made me realize I want to do something that I feel changes the world for them, something that's more impactful than saving the wealthy money on their fuel to fly around the world. And when I started listening to podcasts, I discovered that they have this ability to let us hear the stories of other people, whether it's hearing how they got through a journey, hearing how they built their business, or they wrote a book. We can learn something that we can apply to ourselves. And it was so beneficial, I found, because I was listening to podcasts to figure out, what do I want to do? What's going to be my next step in my career journey? And I had a host reach out to me and say, do you want to pitch me? Because you obviously like what I'm putting out there. And I went, yeah, that's a thing. Yes, I will start doing that. And I dove right into podcasts. I learned how to produce them. And through learning all of this, I figured out what parts I enjoyed and what parts I didn't. And so I forgot the producing part. I didn't like editing. I didn't like the show notes. I launched my own, but I stuck to the pitching part and, figuring out how to work with people and tell their story. What is it that makes them unique? And I find that it's much easier for us to be told than for us to reflect on ourselves as to what is special, what is unique, and pulling that out. So it's just been a lot of fun to get to connect with my clients on that side, but then to also listen to these podcasts and connect with hosts and bring the two together.
That's an awesome story. I love that. And actually, I have a strong family aviation connection also, as my 28-year-old son is a corporate pilot for NetJets.
Oh yeah, they were a client. Yes. I've been to their offices many times.
Yeah, so he started flying at age 14 in a small twin engine and just kept it, like had a real passion for it and kept on going. And about a month ago, he and I went to London in a private jet because that's one of the perks of his job if there's a jet going somewhere empty.
Yeah.
So
And once you fly corporate, I mean, it's really tough going back.
I know last week I had to go on Delta in the back of the plane to LaGuardia in New York. It's like, oh, it's not the same.
Yeah, I understand why if you can afford it, you do it.
Yeah. Well, when the PR Maven podcast really hits it big, then I'll be a NetJets customer. So what are the advantages to a business or a business person to be featured as a guest on a podcast?
There's many advantages. You get to tell your story, and it allows you to share that why behind what it is you do with clients, with future clients. And the beauty of a podcast is that you're going on to a platform that has listeners who already trust the host. That's why they're listening. And that trust is now extended to you as the guest. So it's not a cold lead, a cold call. You automatically have that warm lead because they trust you. And to build that trust, that's huge. You're now steps ahead of that email of, let me introduce myself and here's what I do. You don't have to go through all of that. It allows the listener to hear your words, to hear the way you speak, your knowledge, and it brings an intimate connection that you don't otherwise have unless you are getting on a call and doing all of these additional steps. At the same time, it allows you to have all of this marketing content that you can reuse to attract the people who are already following you. Because I like to say, we never know who truly is following us on social media. There are stalkers. I call myself a stalker. They are just looking and waiting, and they want to buy from you. They want to do something with you, but they're waiting for that moment. And if you can share an episode where you were interviewed, it might be the one thing that clicks for them. They go, oh, this is it. I needed to hear this from you in your words. I'm going to become a client. I'm going to buy your book, your product, your service, whatever it is. So it really allows that connection and to build a relationship and not from scratch.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because when I'm giving my keynote speeches, I frequently talk about know, like, and trust, that people to do business with you, first they need to know you. Second, it helps if they like you. And most importantly, if they're going to spend their hard earned money, whether it's their own money or their company or nonprofits money, they need to trust that you're going to deliver on your promise. And that's either your personal brand or the brand of your company. And basically, a brand really is a promise that you're going to deliver. And in an ideal world, you deliver it over and over again. So you're trustworthy because you're dependable too.
Exactly.
And you kind of show up consistently. And I also like to talk a lot about how you need to show up both in person and online consistently. So you can't just have one persona that you have on Instagram, and then like
Right.
when you're in person, you're completely different. You need to
It's
be the
that whole
same.
talk of be authentic. I'm using air quotes because I can't stand the word. Because if you are showing up in all of these different places and you are the same person, you're saying the same exact thing, you show up with the same attitude, then you're truly being yourself. You're being authentic versus, being someone else on social media than you are when I see you at a conference, than you are on a podcast interview. It'll cause confusion and everybody can see right through it.
Absolutely. Um, how would you identify the contact information for podcast hosts and their producers if you actually want to reach out to them?
So I subscribe to Podchaser. They do have a free version that has contact information, but the old school way of Googling them, go to their website. I also love Instagram. And I think that a lot of people forget the power of Instagram. When you go to someone's bio and there is either a email or a contact button and it has their email, that means you can use it. They have publicized it and you can use it. You don't have to feel bad about, well, I got their email off their their bio on Instagram. It's there for a reason. So it makes it much easier. Go to their website. You should be doing this already in your research, but the website might have the email. It'll have a contact form. There should always be, and this is something I share with my clients, that as you become a guest, you need a way for people to contact you on your website. So a host should have that as well already. And that's the best way. Check out their website and see if they do have a form that says, want to be a guest, click here. And there might be a form to fill out. But if there isn't, then use the email. It's everywhere. You can also Google their name and then put the word email in there and it will come up.
Yeah. Sometimes it'll have just the first letter of their first name and then a series of asterisks
Right.
But the number of asterisks aligns exactly with the number of letters in their last name. So yeah, it doesn't take, you don't have to be a rocket scientist
Exactly.
to figure it out. So I like to share step-by-step instructions with my listeners on how to do something. So if you were to give like step-by-step instructions on how to become a guest on a podcast, what would you say?
Your first step is going to be to create your unique speaking topics. Nothing generic. I would never go onto a show and pitch myself to say, oh, I can talk about podcast pitching. Okay, so can other people. But what is it about podcast pitching that makes me different from other people? So create those topics. And in my book, How to Get on Podcasts, I break down different types of topics and questions to ask yourself so that you can do this homework for yourself. But you can also bounce it off of someone else, say, hey, what does this topic sound? Does this sound good to you? Does this sound interesting? Feel free to do that. Create these unique speaking topics. And I try to aim for 6 and then put them in a branded media kit. So something with your bio, your headshot, your links, everything should be hyperlinked. We never want to give a host homework. So hyperlink everything, have a where you've been featured area, different podcasts, or if you've been in other outlets, put those logos in there. And then brand it so it looks like it stepped right off of your website. Same colors, same fonts. Don't make it look completely different and not match, because then it won't make sense when they do click on your website to look more at you. And then figure out who it is that you want to talk to. Who are the people you're trying to attract, the clients, the readers, whoever it is. And then think about that. Where are those people listening to podcasts? Is it, I always talk about authors, do you have a beach read? Well, who's reading a beach read? Is it a 25 to 45-year-old female? Probably. Where is she listening to podcasts? Is she a mom? Is she on vacation? what kind of shows align with that, and then start searching for those shows. And again, you can use Podchaser. You can also just go into the Apple podcast app and type in some keywords. And then you'll start getting different types of podcasts populating. Click on one that you think resonates, read the description, listen to an episode or two, make sure they take guests. That's important. Make sure that it's still going on, it's still relevant, that their last episode wasn't 2 years ago and they're no longer existing, because these are going to save you time in the end. And then jot it down, start writing down, this podcast. And if this one works, scroll down, especially in Apple Podcasts, because there's a section, more podcasts that you might like or be interested in. Then those are going to also resonate, and you can click on those. You can Google podcasts, put in the keywords again and hit search. You can go on Spotify, do the same thing. These are all search engines that you can use. You can also use hashtags on Instagram, because most of us are all on Instagram. So you can put hashtag female podcasts. Boom, you're going to get a ton. And then you can make them so it's the most recent versus, the top posts, and scroll from there to find them. Once you find them, you make your list. You should also listen to an episode or two and write down what episode you listened to and what resonated with you. Why did you connect with that one? What did you learn from it? And take all of these notes. There's a lot of homework. I've gotten feedback on my book of, wow, this is more work than I expected. And I went, well, yeah, if you do it right, it's going to take time and effort. But when you put in that time and effort, you will reap the rewards. So you've taken all of these notes, you have everything that you know who you want to pitch, and you're going to start crafting your pitch. And you do a regular welcome. Don't put dear, don't, no, just hello or good morning or whatever you feel comfortable with, and go right into what you love about their podcast. Personalize it. Make sure that you get their name right, because it is listed everywhere as the host. I've had many hosts tell me, oh, my name was wrong on a pitch. Come on, these are easy things. And then go into, this is what I speak on, and this is why I think I could help your audience. Here's what they're going to learn. And here's some of my speaking topics. The only copy and paste that goes into a pitch is your 2 or 3 sentence bio. That's truly it. And where you've been featured, all hyperlinked. But your topics, you shouldn't put all 6. You should take the 2 or 3 that are most applicable to that show. The rest will be in the attached media kit. But you should switch them out depending on the show. Don't do the same one for every single show. And make sure that you let them know, here's where you can find me. Hyperlink again, your name, so it goes to your website, your features, your interviews, hyperlink everything, and then send it off. And in 2 or 3 weeks, you can follow up again, and do not follow up with, and I was also featured here, or I can also speak on this. Just a simple follow-up. I always say, go to your sent folder and reply to the original email. That way, the host is not looking for who are you and what email are you responding to, and then do that again 2 or 3 weeks later with, this is the final time I'm going to check in, but I just wanted to make sure you got my email and see if you're interested. And a lot of times your email will get responded to on the follow-up, because hosts have full-time jobs. They have families. They are just like you and me, and they are not sitting here waiting for your pitch email. So give them time to sort through them. And that's why the follow-up is so good. I leave my emails unread if I want to get back to them, but then they start trickling down, down, down. And I know that when they pop back up, oh yeah, that reminds me to respond to that one. So these are the simple ways to simply get on a podcast, get that yes. And then, there's a whole step-by-step once you become the guest. And then once you want to repurpose all of the content as well.
And I would add, to be a really good guest, you share the episode generously with your own audience, because I know, I actually get asked a lot, and your team member named Allison Stefanian had approached me on March 27th. I just looked up the email that she sent me on March 27th, and it was a very good, she reached out and she referenced a very specific episode with Rafi Dersimonian, who's a dear friend of mine, who's a very good publicist up in Waterville, Maine. And and then she and I went back and forth several times, but because the pitch was so good and on point, and she had, your media kit, I responded immediately and sent a message to Emma, who's my producer, the next day. And then Emma followed up with her. So it went very smoothly, but yeah, it was exactly what you're saying. And I have confidence that you're going to share it with all of your audience once it launches.
Yes. And it's so simple that you can, by creating content around an episode, you're really relieving yourself of having to create fresh content that, you have to make up. I'm going to create a blog post that's similar. It's going to be very much like show notes on my own website. I will embed the player, because you can go on Spotify, right click on those 3 dots, and they will give you a link to embed the player. And the beauty is that the host still gets the download, but your website visitors don't have to leave your website to go see it. And on top of a blog post now, then I will have a Instagram post. I can then share that in my stories. Don't only share it in your stories. That is lazy and it goes away in 24 hours. I have my own Spotify playlist. We also create those for all of our clients. So every podcast interview that's done, we add it to their Spotify playlist. That Spotify playlist can also be embedded on their media or press page. You can put it on your LinkedIn page. And so you don't have to go manually update all of your different pages. It's all right there on your Spotify playlist. So these are simple things, put it on Pinterest. If you use the right graphic on that blog post, now you just pinned it on Pinterest too. There's so many different ways that you should be sharing it, and that are easy ways. We also pull transcripts from every show, whether we're given the transcript or it's on the website, or we just create one of our own, and we identify quotes that our client or myself has said, and then we'll use that as a graphic to post about. And you can post so many, because hopefully you're getting a lot of good things out of your mouth that warrant a quote graphic to be created. And every time, share that with the host, tag them, and they will in turn reciprocate and share it, in their stories as well, because the ripple effect then becomes bigger and bigger.
This is so awesome, Michelle. I just love everything that you're saying. It's so helpful. And I'm so glad that Allison had targeted the PR Maven podcast. So we're going to continue with more with you from Michelle. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Pitchcraft, and another PR professional who I respect here in Maine named Elaine Theriault-Currier. And she's somebody who I know, like, and trust. She had told me about Pitchcraft several months ago, and I signed up for a membership, and I got so much out of it. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Michelle, but it's a really great kind of membership organization that helps you meet freelance writers and editors and reporters from all kinds of media, and really take a deep dive into how to pitch to them. So my team and I have gotten a lot out of that. And then we connected about a sponsorship. So we're going to hear more now from Derek and Kelsey Ogletree at Pitchcraft now.
My name is Kelsey Ogletree.
I'm Derek Ogletree.
And we co-founded Pitchcraft to put the relationships back in public relations. I've been a journalist for about 10 years now and was laid off from my job as an editor in 2017. I decided to take the plunge into freelance writing, and really what I noticed starting in 2020 is that public relations professionals started scrambling to really figure out how to pitch stories to writers and editors during the pandemic. So that's when we really started developing the concept for Pitchcraft, which is a month-to-month membership platform really focused on helping public relations professionals build those relationships with independent journalists and editors. By joining Pitchcraft, you could save hours of research time week to week. You'll get the opportunity to personally get to know a new freelance writer every week, the opportunity to interface with editors and writers live in monthly pop-up discussions, the chance to build community with the rest of our members in weekly calls, access to e-commerce and affiliate resources, a master pitching calendar, and more. We'd love to show you how Pitchcraft can become an essential part of your PR toolkit. If you like the sound of that, book a demo with us today.
This episode is powered by Pitchcraft. Pitchcraft has been generous enough to share a discount code to share with you. If you use code PR Maven in all caps at checkout, you will get $200 off your first month. There is a link in the show notes. Welcome back, and today we're talking with Michelle Glogovac on the PR Maven Podcast. So Michelle, you're a podcast expert. How do you prepare to be a guest on a podcast?
Oh, you do your research and your homework. So you Google, again, go to the website of the host, go listen to some previous episodes. So before I got on, I listened to an episode of yours. I also went to your website. I know that you've been on the Make Meaning podcast with Lynn Galadner. Lynn was a client of mine. So I can connect with you on these other levels. And then that's going to bring my comfort level as well, because I know that we have something to talk about. I can continue a conversation with you, whether it's on the topic that I'm speaking on, or I can ask about yourself. So this is going to calm any of those nerves. I have playlists also, for breath work or meditation or confidence, whatever it takes to get you in that space. But, have your water ready. I've got my LaCroix right here. I've got my phone in airplane mode so that nobody will distract me. Do as much as you can. Podcasts, for the most part, will be edited, but as much as you can do to be fully present, to not be looking at your emails. I have had a guest come on where I could hear them responding to an email while I was asking a question. Don't be that person.
Gosh.
Do not be that person.
That's crazy.
It's sad. But, be present. Be ready to have a conversation with the other person and give them everything, because it's going to come through in the interview and to the listeners if you really want to be there, or if you'd rather be somewhere else and your mind is somewhere else looking at the text messages or whatever it may be. So be present. Listen to an episode or two. They might have a question that is always asked at the end. We know you're going to be asked, where can people find you? It's literally the last question on every podcast I think I've ever been on, or every client has ever been on, that will be asked. So there is no need for you to come on the show thinking, I have to sell myself. I have to sell whatever it is that I do sell. You come on to share your knowledge and to share your journey. And as long as you focus on that and are as giving with that knowledge and your story, then you don't need to worry about the rest of it. You will be asked later where they can find you. That's not a big deal. It will come later. So just going in and knowing that this is your focus. You're simply talking to another human being. I think a lot of people get the jitters, or we think of the word interview and we think job interview and, now I'm in the hot seat, but really you're just going to have a conversation with someone else who wants to get to know you. And it becomes a beautiful thing when you look at, I sound so woo-woo and I'm not a woo-woo person, but when it comes to podcasts, it's so wonderful that we get to meet people who are complete strangers to us, connect with them for about an hour and walk away as friends. And then it becomes something, bigger on the back end of, oh, I could have just gotten business later from whoever listens, but you get to meet someone you wouldn't otherwise meet in real life potentially. So look at it as this gift that you're being given because you get to use their platform and share of yourself and get to know someone else. And then you get to share your knowledge with everybody else. So, just do your homework and then show up nice and prepared.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I love having a podcast, because if I just randomly approached somebody and said, oh, could I have 45 minutes or an hour of your time and ask you like all these questions?
Right.
You'd probably think I was a crazy person. But if I come to you and say, I have a podcast and I'd like to have a 45-minute to an hour conversation with you and share it with everybody that I know, then you're going to be interested. So I had John Lee Dumas on my podcast from Entrepreneurs on Fire. And I'm sure if I just emailed him randomly and said, hey, John, would you like have a conversation with me? He'd
say that's $10,000.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, it was a short episode, but it was still a good episode. So
I say that my podcast, I am so selfish. I do it for myself. I do it to share with others too, but I get to choose who I want to have on. I get to ask people that, normally in real, like you said, to ask someone, hey, can I talk to you? I want to get to know you. It could be a little weird. And, people think, oh, you can't pick my brain. But if I invite you onto my show, I can kind of pick your brain. I
Yeah,
can
right.
get kind of a
Exactly.
coaching session out of it, and you're going to get all kinds of marketing content out of it. So it's a
Right.
win-win.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I hate it when I get emails from or a phone call. Do you have a few minutes that I can pick your brain? It's like, no, I don't really have any spare time for that. People should just never use that term anymore. It's just
Right.
it kind of infers you just want free service, basically.
Exactly. Yes.
So, what is the responsibility of the guest to help promote the podcast?
There should be a much bigger responsibility that we put on right now. Podcasting has no standards for the industry, which is a total shame. And I believe that as the guest, you should be sharing it. You should be sharing it in your feed, not your story. Like I said, you should be sharing it on your website. You should be sharing it everywhere that you show up on social media. And not just once, keep going back. And if the host is sharing it and tags you, share that as well. It continues the ripple effect. And often I hear, oh, I don't want to be considered self-promoting. It's not. It is not self-promotion to share that you've been interviewed somewhere. You are thanking the host first and foremost, but you're also allowing your audience to hear more from you, because whatever benefit you've given the existing listening audience, now your audience gets to benefit from that. And the host gets new listeners. So you really, it's your duty to share it, and more than in your stories. I can't plug that one more because it irks me so bad. I've heard this before, well, I didn't share the graphic in my feed because it didn't match my aesthetic. Then create your own branded graphics and share those. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Just share it and tag the host and tell people what the name of the show is that you were on so they can find it. It comes down to being so simple, but simply do it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you for saying that, Michelle. So, is there a book, an app, or a website that has been helpful to you in your life, in your career, and why?
I feel like there's been so many, when we talk about apps, or websites, Podchaser has been wonderful on the business side. When I talk about books, I read Emma Isaac's Winging It. She's the CEO of Business Chicks in Australia. And there was one phrase that I continue years later to use, and it is to sit on your hands. Another host referred to it the other day as a sign-up queen. I am the one who at school, I'm like, yes, I will join the PTA. Yes, I will volunteer in the classroom. Yes, I'll go on the field trip. Do I have that kind of time? Absolutely not. But I look around and I go, well, if no one else is going to do it, then I'll raise my hand. And Emma says, sit on your hands. And so I am learning to sit on my hands more and more. And I think that is applicable in business, in life, in parenting. Sit on your hands and it will be okay.
Yeah, I love that. I was so lucky when my kids were in school because my mom was, in her late 50s, early 60s, and she had a lot of energy and she was retired and she loved kids. So she went on all the field trips with my kids, so I didn't have to.
Today was my last Thursday in my daughter's classroom. I asked the teacher, I go, we got 2 more weeks, and I do every other. She goes, oh, you're done. You're absolutely done. But my son's classroom's no, I've got 2 more weeks in that one.
I bet the teachers love you.
I hope so. I'm spending a lot of time with them.
Yeah. So here's the last question, Michelle. How can people get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking.
What a surprise.
See, we told you guys, this is the last question. This is where you save it all.
Yeah.
You can find my website is the MLGcollective.com. My personal website is michelleglogovac.com. My podcast is My Simplified Life. It's everywhere you listen to podcasts, and how to get on podcasts is out everywhere. You can buy the hardback, the Kindle, or if you liked listening to me, I'll read it to you in the audiobook version. And I'm on Instagram at Michelle Glogovac, all the social media places. Just search for Michelle Glogovac and you will find me.
Well, that's great. Well, I have really enjoyed our conversation today, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
I'm glad Allison from your team identified the PR Maven podcast and reached out to me.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Well, have a great day. And I hope everybody in PR Maven Nation has a great day as well. This episode is powered by Pitchcraft. Pitchcraft has been generous enough to share a discount code to share with you. If you use code PR Maven in all caps at checkout, you will get $200 off your first month. There is a link in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.